I often say, well, look, what I find, all I can say to you is how it's changed me, but it might be different for you. Like I studied these facts and I concluded that this is true. But and it has changed my whole way of guiding my life. It's brought me down, you know, um, much more meaningful paths and that's more pursuing something meaningful rather than expedient. And I think that, like the courtroom, it's the facts, and then you need that maybe that intuition. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to figure out how to tackle the exodus from the church in that way.
Well, I think that I think that in the end, we all make decisions about what it is we're going to bend our knee and submit to. So, in the sense that I had to kind of examine the case and the evidence for Christianity before I could bend my knee to it. That was the value that the evidence had for me. And by the way, that approach is not so self-centered that I thought that I was. In the end, it's all a God thing. God is using the evidence to help me to make a decision. And then once I bend my knee to that decision, I don't have to return to the evidence every day. My journey is not to constantly review evidence. No, I've actually done that. I made a decision based on that evidence. And now it's about a life of submission, of how do I turn corners and draw closer to Jesus as an act of submission on a daily basis. That does not require me then to constantly review the evidence. I've already made the decision. But the question is, how did I get to a point where I made the decision? Now, you'll hear people all the time who will say, well, look, you make it sound like you have the intellectual capacity to weigh the evidence and actually accurately make the decision to begin with. But as your fallen human nature, look, in the end, God is going to use something to draw us to himself so we can make the decision. For many of us, it'll just be the pure gospel message. But clearly, he needs humans. He doesn't need him. He's using us for whatever reason to share a message with other humans. He doesn't need any of that. He could actually have us all come by way of dreams, all come by way of visions. We could become Christians some other way. But instead, he, for whatever reason, lets us, pardon me, communicate the message to others, both because it's an all act of grace. My deciding I was suddenly interested in Jesus, that's not a move I could make. That's a move the Holy Spirit makes. And then I'm ready to listen to the evidence. Now, my way in is to listen to the evidence and to make an assessment. For others, it'll be different. Mm-hmm. But that act of being able to share evidence or share the gospel is another act of grace on God's part, because he doesn't need you, but he's using you anyway. Now, isn't that interesting? So it's an act of grace that flips the switch that allows us to hear the gospel. It's also an act of grace that allows us to be used to speak the message of the gospel. And in one case, God is justifying, he's saving. In the other case, he's sanctifying, he's growing us as communicators of the evidence or communicators of the gospel. All of it is God's grace. It's all God's power, but it's this mechanism by it. But I think in the end, for me, as somebody who now understands why this is, like, I don't wrestle anymore with questions in my own mind. Why would God allow that? Or why does God do this? Or what, these are issues that I have examined. I think there's a lot of us who have accepted a lot of truth claims because they're true, but we haven't examined them. So then when someone questions us, we're kind of flat-footed. Now, this can either cause us to have internal doubts and live slightly differently because we are wrestling with internal doubts, or if we're not prepared to answer our kids' doubts, so we can't help them to get to the place where they're like, okay, I'm in, I submit, I don't need to go back there again. I don't need to revisit that constantly because I've already looked at those issues. I've already looked at those claims, and I know now why I'm a Christian. I just think we're far less likely to be shaken if we've at least looked at the claims once and then mastered and moved on and moved past those claims. I have seen this in the life of young people. If they've encountered the claims with me before they get someplace where they encounter the claims with a stranger, they're far more likely to say, well, yeah, I've been there, done that. I get it. I understand why you're wrestling with those issues, but I'm not anymore because I've already wrestled with those issues. And for these reasons, I've moved on.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, I think, with young people. I know that in the end, though, we're going to have to provide the two whys for every what. It's not going to be just apologetics, the first why. Like, why do you think that's true? At some point, it's going to be relevance. The second why. Why should it matter to me? And so we're going to help show young people why the changed life is a better life. Now, I always, the modernist in me says it should look. I don't care if it's a better life. It's a true life. I'm not after this to have a better life. And I think it's dangerous when we pursue Christianity for the kind of life it might give us. Look, historically, Christians have suffered. They're suffering in most places in the world today outside of the West. So it's not like, they're not becoming Christians over there because it's giving them their best life now. Instead, they're Christians over there and they're getting killed for it. So there has to be more than just, why should it matter to me? I want to be a Christ follower because it matters to the God of the universe. Okay. But I get it. We're in a time right now where young people need to know, does he still matter to me? Like, I'm not feeling it. And by the way, you've had a conversion experience that you think really is also grounded in your emotions and your feelings and your experience. But for a lot of young people to hold to the moral teaching of Jesus on sexual identity, on the traditional form of marriage, on sexuality, really, these are going to be headbutting the cultural expectations for young people directly as we go forward. You're either going to have to reinterpret the teaching of Jesus or ignore certain teaching of Jesus or just reject Jesus altogether, because the culture is saying that those views are outdated. Those views are hate speech. Those views are immoral now. This is so. How are we going to convince young people if it's all about how this makes you feel? Because in the end, it's going to probably lead to the rejection of your peers, and certainly the rejection of social media channels going forward, and the rejection of the publishers who are going to be able to post their books on Amazon. This is where this is headed. So we're going to have to help our young people realize that, there's something bigger than your feelings or what this might do for your life to make it better. As a matter of fact, this may not make your life better, but it is true. So does truth matter to you?